Good morning. It is 7:05 on a Friday. We've reached the end of another week. I always appreciate y'all letting me get myself together when I'm first coming on. This morning, I actually want to say I got up and I worked out. So it's been a while since I worked out on a Friday, like really hard, but I'm trying to get back this consistency. It's been, for anybody who knows me, I've been on a weight loss journey for a while. Excuse me, just sweating everywhere. And, I had a car accident in September of last year. And it just kind of sort of threw my whole life in a loop, especially the physically. So I was already dealing with some stuff like, being postmenopausal, dealing with night sweats and everything, anxiety. I have panic attacks. But this accident just seemed to exacerbate all of that. And so it's been hard trying to find that stable place for me, getting back to Tracy. So these are just working out this morning was just a small step to try to get back to that. But I just wanted to share that if you are on a journey and you have a setback, that doesn't mean that you can't come back. Just sometimes it takes a little longer, it's a little harder, and that's okay. You are equipped to do whatever you need to do. It's all in you. You just have to tap into that source. And don't forget who you really are. It's whether that's with your personal life, physical life, financial life, we all go through seasons. And I just want to encourage you today that if you're in a season where it just seems harder than most, know that you're not alone. Oh, good morning, Miss Lisa from Crazy Mom Creations. Y'all should know how I feel about her. I'm going to get to New Jersey. We're going to meet soon. I feel like she's one of my best friends in the whole world, and we've only met on social media, but I got much love for Miss Lisa. And so I just want to encourage y'all today that if you're in an obstacle, if you're in a circumstance, don't quit. Okay? It's temporary. Your business is going to grow. Your relationship is going to get better, or you'll learn to leave it. Your financial situation will get better. Just hold on. Trust the process and stay committed. And that's for me today. So sticking with today, this month, the whole month of June, we've been talking about emotional wellness. It really just stems from emotional wellness seems to be one of those things. I mean, people take care of their bodies. I don't know what this is in my head. It's getting on my nerves. But people take care of their physical bodies. You will monitor your money, but you will not really take that same energy into your emotional well-being. So today we're going to talk about what is emotional unavailability. So let's dive in. So as we've discussed through the month of June, emotional well-being refers to the ability to experience, understand, and manage your emotions effectively, leading to a positive overall state of mind and a feeling of satisfaction with your life. Essentially, emotional well-being is feeling good and functionally well emotionally. In contrast, emotional unavailability is a term used to describe individuals who struggle to connect deeply with others on an emotional level. It can be an unwillingness or inability to be present with emotions, whether they're your own of others, whether they're your own or belong to others. And so emotional well-being is just that inability to have that deep level connection. We all know people who have connections on a superficial level. They're your friends, maybe family, or others who, when it comes time to having that deeper connection, it's just not there. And so there's things to be considered of, because emotional unavailability exists on a spectrum. You might only struggle in a specific situation or with certain people. So it's not that you're unemotionally available to everybody in every circumstance. It literally can be in specific situations. And it's not always a conscious choice. It can stem from past experience or learned behaviors, and we're going to get into that. But emotional unavailability can impact relationships. It can lead to feelings of loneliness, frustration, and dissatisfaction for not only for you, for those in your life. Hello and happy Friday. I love you too, Renee. Again, Renee is one of my best friends, favorite people in the whole wide world. Don't know what I would do without my Miss Renee. One day it's going to be, again, I keep saying this every week, but it's just, right now it's too hot. If I sat on Renee's porch, I'd scared because I think I'd have a heat stroke. So So, and Lisa and Renee are people who I appreciate and value because they're very much emotionally available for me, and I appreciate that. So, it's always easy to talk about what someone else is, and what I want to do is I want to focus on the signs of emotional unavailability in yourself. It's always, one of the things I talk about repeatedly is it's always easy to look at someone else's flaws and go, oh, they're not emotionally available. Oh, they're toxic, or they are, what's the other word everybody likes to use now? I can't think of it right now. It's not antisocial, but it's narcissistic. Everybody in the world is narcissistic. I wish I looked that definition up for you label people, but people tend to focus on others' emotions and feelings instead of validating and looking at their own. So we're going to talk about what the signs are if you are emotionally unavailable. Number one, difficulty expressing your feelings. You may struggle to talk about your emotions or shy away from those vulnerable conversations. Now, there's a difference between I don't want to put people in my business and the struggle to express your emotions. A lot of times when people are struggling to talk about their emotions or they shy away, it's because they're emotionally unavailable. They don't want to put themselves out there to be able to have a conversation on that deeper level. They're afraid of the outcomes, and we'll get into that, which leads to the next one, avoiding deep or intimate conversations. You prefer keeping things light and avoid discussing sensitive topics. That is really hard when you are in an emotional relationship with somebody. And again, I'm not just talking about a relationship. Good morning. Y'all know my Aunt Nita. Everybody jump in and say hi to Miss Anita. So avoiding deep or intimate conversations just means that, again, you just prefer to keep things light. There's no sensitive subject. You don't allow yourself to engage or even think about that deeper level next conversation. Fear of commitment. You might hesitate to commit to long-term plans or relationships. That speaks for itself. You just have this sense of, I don't want to commit myself. I don't want to make plans for the future. I don't want to get involved in this relationship. I don't see a long-term future. And oftentimes that stems from that. When people say, I don't see a long-term future with you, that could be that they don't have that feeling toward you. Good morning, Cousin Francis. Thank you for joining me today. Miss Francis too. But they also, when people have avoidance of commitment, that also means that they don't see a long-term view of their own life. If someone says, well, I don't think about tomorrow, why not? I mean, I'm not saying you have to plan for it, but there's a possibility. Are you just going to live your life willy-nilly? Some people prefer that, particularly those who are emotionally unavailable. Dismissive of others' feelings. You might find it difficult to emphasize with others or dismiss their emotions altogether. So you know someone who's like, when you're trying to express yourself, or even when we're talking about yourself, when people are trying to express themselves to you, you become very dismissive of their feelings. I just wish they'd stop talking to me. I wish they'd move on. Just leave that alone. That means you have unavailability for yourself. You're just very dismissive of how they feel. Prioritizing independence. You may use independence as a shield to avoid relying on others or others relying on you. Being super independent is actually a very much sign of a trauma. That really goes to show that there's a lack of you don't trust. When you're super independent, you don't need nothing for nobody. You ever hear those people, I don't want nothing for nobody. I don't need nothing for nobody. That's really actually a sign of a deeper level of trauma, because you haven't learned, maybe in experience in the past, you've learned that you can't trust anybody. And so when you're super independent and you prioritize that over relationships, or even you prioritize that over emotional, connecting with someone emotionally, it just means that I don't want to rely on you, and I don't want you to rely on me. Inconsistent behavior. You might be warm and engaging in one moment and then distant and aloof in the next. And a lot of times, again, people will use psychological terms. Oh, that person is narcissistic. Oh, that person has a personality disorder. No, it's just that person has low emotional availability, or you have low emotional availability. You don't have the ability to connect on that deeper level, and then you just struggle because you're inconsistent. One day you want the connection, next day you don't. You struggle with that. Struggling with trust. you find it difficult to trust others and often question their intentions. So when you have low emotional unavailability, you're always questioning, what do they really want from me? What they have a hidden agenda. What's their plan for me? They're setting me up for something. Or maybe they just really like you and they just want to get to know you. There's not a hidden agenda in that process. But when you're struggling with low emotional availability, or you have none, then you will always think that others are out to use you and you don't trust them very well. Having a history of short-term relationships. You might have a pattern of avoiding depth and intimacy. So when you have a low emotional availability, you have a lot of brief, maybe intense relationships, but they end. And so you're asking yourself, well, how's that emotional unavailability? As you stay in long-term relationships, you have to become more vulnerable, and we're going to get into that. And you have to share more because the person wants to get to know you more. So people who are emotionally available, if you are emotionally unavailable, you tend to have a lot of short-term relationships. They may be intense, but they don't last. Feeling uncomfortable with your own emotions. You may struggle to process and understand your own feelings. And so a lot of times when people have emotional unavailability, they don't know how they really feel. They struggle to connect their feelings with words. They tend to want to stay in their brain. There's a word for this. And you're not able to process the feeling. I feel a certain way. You then think, you're just not able to connect that dot. And so then when you can't understand your own feelings, then you definitely can't understand somebody else's feelings. When you are struggling to come to terms with how you feel and what you want, then it's going to be very difficult for you to have that empathy for someone else and even understand how they're feeling. Overemphasizing physical intimacy. You're more comfortable with physical closeness than emotional connection. So these are people that when you have arguments or discussions, and this would be in a romantic relationships, they want to resolve it through sex. They don't want to talk about how they're feeling. They don't want to talk about how you're feeling. They want to use that physical intimacy to eliminate the conversation. That's a big key. When you know you're unemotionally available, well, I don't want to talk about how I'm feeling. I don't want to get into depth of what this may feel like or what this relationship means to me. Let's just have sex. Yeah. Avoiding conflict. You might disengage during disagreements rather than working through them. So when someone's emotionally unavailable, they just disconnect. This is when people will ghost you. When you're having an intense argument, and again, this is where the friends, family, and then all of a sudden they just get ghosted. They just lose. They lose your phone number. They get gone. They ghost you. And so when you understand that these are the signs of it, how many of you look at those things and say, that I have some of that trait? In some areas, again, understanding that emotional availability doesn't mean you're all that all the time. It may be about certain people, certain situations. But when we look at those key elements of what it looks like, how many of you may feel like, in some areas of my life, I'm definitely emotionally unavailable. So what are the causes of emotional unavailability? It can stem from various factors: post-trauma or unresolved emotional wounds. Negative experience create fears and anxieties that make it hard to open up and trust. Listen, if you've been burned in a relationship, if you've given it your all and that person used you or mistreated you, of course you're going to have a hard time opening up and trusting again. Duh. I don't want to make it seem like if you experience that, I'm just emotionally unavailable. No, you've had a traumatic experience. You've had a deep emotional wound. And it's hard, especially if you've survived physical, sexual abuse. It's very hard to trust others' intentions and emotions when others have shown you that you can't trust them. So yes, that is a very normal reason. I don't want anybody to think, she's saying I'm emotional. That's normal. But it's what we can't change what happens to us, but it's what we do with it that helps us move on. Fear of vulnerability. Some people associate being vulnerable as being weak or being hurt. Vulnerability doesn't have anything to do with weakness. In fact, the strongest people are the most vulnerable because they are not afraid to take ownership of their emotions. They're not afraid to tell people that they love them. They're not afraid to have that. They're not afraid to just be vulnerable and go, you know what, I'm tired, I'm hurt, this bothered me, or be vulnerable and sit with someone when they're going through things. But when we've had a trauma and we've been taught that being vulnerable is a sign of weakness, then of course we're not going to want to be vulnerable. Poor role models. Growing up in an environment where emotion expression was discouraged can lead to difficulty expressing and communicating your feelings. So if you grew up in a household where, your father told you, boys don't cry, and you were told, well, girls just stick it out. You just gotta put your foot down. You don't cry. Don't give nobody no. Then you learn not to process your feelings. You learn to stuff them. You learn that there's not a safe place for me to be able to express myself. I can't trust other people. So my poor role models taught me that it's not okay to express myself. So if you've been taught that, and that's 20 years in, it's not like you can all of a sudden go, I'm just going to talk all the time. That, and especially if you've grown up in an environment where it's toxic and emotions are negatively displayed. And I mean, in other words, people communicate, but they only communicate through fussing and fighting and arguing. There's not a process where anybody gets any resolution. It's just a bunch of yelling and screaming, and then everything's supposed to go back to normal. Yes, it would be a very difficult way or a process to grow up under, and you would have be emotionally unavailable. Stress in life circumstances. External pressures can consume your emotional energy, thus leading to withdrawal. I say this all the time, and it's true. When we're going through stressful situations, the natural thing is to go in. It's to separate yourself from others. And while there is a process that separating yourself, stepping back, and connecting with yourself is a good thing, isolation and withdrawal is never a good thing. The devil loves nothing more to get you alone and beat the crap out of you. And so when you isolate yourself, you become even more emotionally unavailable. And then when you withdraw, then you don't know who to trust because you don't even trust yourself. You're listening to the voices and things in your head. Has that ever happened to anybody else? You don't have trust to other people. You don't know really if you trust your own, you don't trust your own decisions because you've made some bad decisions and you're like, I don't know if I even trust myself. Then it just leads to even causing more emotional unavailability because you're afraid to put yourself out there. So how do we get through that? One way is self-reflection. Reflect on your past and current relationships. Do you notice any patterns of avoiding intimacy or deep emotional connections? Consider your reactions to emotional conversations. Do you tend to change the subject or withdraw? Journal your feelings. Write down instances where you felt uncomfortable or choose to avoid emotional engagement. And ask for feedback from trusted individuals. Ask close friends or family members about their perceptions of your emotional availability. And when I say that, I do encourage you to, when you do that self-reflection, make sure it's trusted friends and family. Make sure that someone that that's, I would ask Renee, or I would ask anybody on this right now currently in the thread, that what do you think of my emotional unavailability? Because I trust them. I know that they love me and they're going to give me great feedback. But I also like to journal. I journal about the times where I feel like I'm emotional distance. And I also just love to think about the times in my past relationships. I don't always look at my past relationships or current relationships and say, what's wrong? I look at them for patterns of lessons. What did I learn about myself through this relationship? Was there a pattern? Was there a situation? Did I ignore red flags? And so having that self-reflection also gives you an opportunity to check in with yourself and check your own emotional unavailability. So what to do, now that we've talked about what emotional unavailability, being emotionally unavailable is, we've talked about some of the reasons why. What if you think, after you hearing all this, you say, you know what? I'm emotionally unavailable. Now that I've done this self-reflection, what can I do now? Acknowledge the possibility. Recognizing and accepting the sign is the first step. Acknowledging that, listen, I've had these past traumatic issues in my life, and there's a part of me that's emotionally unavailable. And again, sometimes it can be circumstantial. It doesn't mean that it's every situation, but acknowledging that I'm guarded. I don't trust fully. I'm super independent. I don't like to depend on others or have others depend on me. Recognizing those signs is a first step, and accepting it. Because again, one of the things that change, when we really talk about change in our life, when we really want to make a significant difference in our own lives, we have to recognize and accept it. Hey, these are my shortcomings. These are my faults. This is where I fall short. You can't always just focus on the good. I think that's a lot of reasons why people don't grow, because they're only focused on the good. If you only focus on the good, you're never going to grow. You got to address some of those barriers in your life. Seek professional help. Therapy can be very beneficial in addressing the underlying causes and developing healthier emotional patterns. So this is, although I'm a health life coach and I have experience as a therapist, this is where I would encourage you. If you've had traumatic life experiences, this is where a therapist or support group can be really beneficial. As a health life coach, I can help you move from your present situation forward. And we may talk about some of those issues in your past. Good morning, my sister Gay. How are you doing? Thank you for joining me today. Love you. We can talk about how some of those past experiences impact where you are today, but a therapist is going to help you unpack. They're going to help you identify, when did I first start feeling this way? When did I first realize this traumatic experience, and unpack that for you. And so having a therapist, a primary care physician, a life coach, and a pill in the shot is also good with prayer. But yes, if you want to unpack that emotional baggage, that's where a therapist comes in. Practice opening up gradually by sharing your feelings with trusted individuals and taking those small, manageable steps. So nobody's saying you got to bust out and just start telling everything right away. That's not healthy either. In therapy, we would call that the pendulum shift. Some people go from being very close and they shift to, they just tell everything to everybody that will listen, and they go back and forth until they find that middle ground. But I always encourage people to start out gradually. Start by sharing your feelings with just your closest friends, your family, someone that you know is not going to judge you. And just, you don't have to share everything, just small manageable steps. See how that feels for you. See how it feels to be vulnerable, and sit in that. That's an amazing feeling when we can sometimes just sit in that. So start by taking those small manageable steps. Work on developing on your empathy. Focus and understanding on connecting with others' emotions. Again, one of the things of emotional unavailability, I struggle with that today. Emotional unavailability is the inability to have that connectedness, to have empathy. Work on developing that. When you find yourself being dismissive of someone's feelings, ask yourself, what did they say that triggered me to not care? What is it about their situation or their conversation that makes me disconnect? When you begin, that's one way of developing and practicing empathy. I may not feel connected to this person in this moment, but I'm going to sit with them and I'm going to listen to them. Be patient with yourself. Building emotional availability takes time and effort. It's not something that comes overnight. It's something that has to be developed. Just like you can't lose 30 pounds in 2 days, you're not going to have emotional availability in a week. It takes time. It takes practice. It works. It's like I said, working with a therapist, a life coach, a health coach, a trusted friend, your pastor, your primary care doctor, whomever, finding someone that's going to walk through that process with you, because it's also important to remember that emotional unavailability is not a personal flaw and that change is possible. If you're concerned about developing your emotional availability, exploring these signs and considering professional support can help you develop a deeper, more fulfilling connection. Jump in the chat and let me know what you think about emotional unavailability. The signs of it, do you see that in yourself? Again, this is about looking at yourself, looking in the mirror and seeing if I have any of those characteristics of being emotionally unavailable. Again, it's not just, it can be, you can struggle in specific situations with certain people, but yet this is an opportunity to take these steps forward and build on that emotional availability, because you're going to be more at peace with yourself. And today, I want to give my love notes. My first love note goes to a Southside sister and a great supporter of mine, Angela Turner. She always shows me love. I see her in public. She just always hugs a sister, and just she loves me on it. She likes everything on my platforms, and it's just so nice to have someone that you grew up with in your South Nashville, and that just gives me such love. So Miss Angela Turner, I give love to you. And for my fellow content creator, Stylish Beauty Connection, she's a positive content creator. I love her. She's always liking and sharing my information. So I'm going to put her link in there, and I want you to follow her. And also, please go and follow my cousin's new project, The Powder Room Luxe. Again, I'm really proud of you, Jonathan. I'm really proud of you getting this business off the ground. And again, it costs nothing to like and follow a business page. So please, I'm going to put their links in there, and I want you to go and like. And if you want to share the information, that's even better. And today's reading comes from my book, Blooming Bear. If you don't have this book, I really recommend it. You can see I love it. But this is I think it's her second book, but it's really beneficial. And it's been one of the things that's really, I found fundamental in my own personal growth. And today her poem is Irony. Isn't it ironic how we grow, we simultaneously outgrow? The things that once enraged us suddenly do not warrant our slightest reaction. The structure, people, music, mindset, outfits, and influences we once believed we couldn't live without brought the most peace to our lives after we removed them. The way we viewed rejection, happiness, worth, and success shifted after we realized the complexity of protection, joy, and alignment. You see, the journey is less about finding out who we are. It's about losing the idea and pressure of who we in the world thinks we ought to be. It's about tackling our own toxic traits, uncovering our inner strength, discerning actualization from conditioning, and aligning ourselves with purpose, passion, and spiritual power. It was never intended for others to understand, because the true beauty always lied in understanding, loving, and accepting ourselves. Blooming Bear. Highly recommend it. And I want to thank y'all for jumping in with me today. It's 7:33, 5, whatever. And I just want to thank y'all for joining me today. I appreciate you. Continue to just pray for me. I pray for y'all. Let's just make sure that we stay safe. It is a heat advisory out all across the country. Please be safe. Stay hydrated. If you don't have to go out, don't. Stay in the house. Join or get online. Watch Crazy Mom Creations and all the wonderful work that's going on in the crafting community. I can sit and watch them for hours. I can't do it, but I love them and I love to watch their live shows. So please be safe. Y'all take care, and I'll see y'all next week. All right, take care. Bye-bye.